Aardvark gadgets produce scene graphs. We won't get into exactly what goes into a scene graph in this tutorial, except to say that it's a tree full of stuff that tells Aardvark what to draw and how the user should interact with that stuff. Each gadget makes a scene graph of its own. Probably they're different from each other, and no two gadgets have the same scene graph. But exactly what's in there and whether or not they're actually unique, they'll all depend on what the gadget's trying to do. Aardvark's job is to take those scene graphs and draw them over and over as the user moves their head around or their hands around. Part of the scene graph tells Aardvark which things are positioned relative to the user's left hand, which things are positioned relative to the user's right hand, and if anything is positioned relative to the stage or the head or anything else that Aardvark knows is an origin. The stage is what Aardvark calls the origin that's the center of the user's tracking space, so the middle of their room. This enables Aardvark to draw the next frame automatically without any code running in the gadget itself. So as the user's left hand moves around, any parts of the gadget that are drawn relative to the left hand will be drawn in the new position. Here's how all of that works from the gadget's point of view. A bunch of different things could cause the gadget to want to change what's being drawn. The user might press a button. Some timer might expire. Gadgets have access to all the regular JavaScript functions that any web page would, so they can set timers and intervals and that sort of thing. There could be something that happens on a server that the gadget's connected to. Gadgets have access to HTTP requests and WebSockets, so they can connect to the network and do a variety of things that are all gadget specific. Whatever these events are depends entirely on the gadget. When a gadget receives one of these events that makes it want to change what it looks like, it runs some code and then spits out a new scene graph. For some gadgets, that might happen a few times per second. For others, it might happen once and then never happen again. It all depends on what the gadget is actually trying to do. All of those updated scene graphs are sent down to Aardvark, which remembers the most recent scene graph from each gadget. Then every time it needs to draw a new frame to show on the headset, it processes all those scene graphs and generates actual pixels to show users. This rendering process is the only thing in Aardvark that generally runs at 90 Hz, 120 Hz, or whatever the frame rate of the headset is. If your gadget is running some of its code at the headset's frame rate, it's likely that it's not doing things in the way that really works with the grain in Aardvark, and you should think about whether or not there's another way to do the same thing where you don't need to run your code so often. On the left side, you'll see a list of things that gadgets are likely to care about. These are the things that if the gadget is interacting with them, then the gadget will have an easier time of it, because this is what Aardvark is intending to allow gadgets to have access to. One of those things would be user interactions. So the user presses a button on the controller, the user pokes something in the world, the user interacts with a panel. Any of these could cause gadget code to run, cause a new scene graph to be generated. This also includes complex interaction logic. So user presses button A and then button B, the gadget has access to those things, knows when they happen, can do a sequence of events and do whatever it is they want to do in response to that. This includes talking to servers. Gadgets have access to WebSockets. They have access to HTTP requests. They have access to WebRTC. So they can do a lot of different things that would interact with a network, and they might do any number of implement any number of features. Gadgets will also often need to know when they come close to other gadgets or close to other parts of themselves, and they do this by defining volumes that they pass to Aardvark, and then Aardvark will tell them when those volumes intersect. There are also some things that gadgets generally do not tend to care about. They don't care about exactly where the user's hands are. If you find yourself writing code where you expect to get information about where the user's hands are, and then you generate a new scene graph, that code, in order to do the right thing, is likely going to need to run at frame rate. And that's not going to work out. Your gadget is not going to be able to update its scene graph at 90 Hz or 120 Hz. So you'll need to rethink the way that you're getting that information and exactly what you're doing with it. Gadgets generally don't care about what other gadgets are running. Even when they need to interact with other gadgets as part of doing their work, gadgets generally don't care which other gadgets they interact with. They use a system called an interface, which is a Aardvark-specific process for two gadgets to talk to each other, to abstract all of that away. So if a gadget implements a feature that requires a color to be selected, then a different color picking gadget can implement the other end of that protocol, and when the two talk to each other, neither of them cares what the other one actually is going to do with the color or exactly how the color is being picked. Knowledge about other gadgets is generally not something that gadgets tend to care about. They also tend to not know anything about what frame rate the headset is running at. If the headset is running at 90 Hz or 120 Hz, 140 Hz, 72 Hz, whatever, The gadgets are not going to run code at that frame rate, so they don't really care either when a frame is being generated or what the frame rate is. So at a high level, that's an overview of how gadgets think about their scene graph and think about talking to other gadgets. We'll get into a lot more detail about exactly what goes into the scene graph and exactly how they talk to other gadgets in future tutorials. But if there's anything else that was not clear about what we just talked about, please leave a comment below or jump on the Slack and let us know there. We'd also love to hear from you if you have any suggestions for what other features of Aardvark you'd like to see tutorials on. The set of things that are definitely on the list to do are every kind of node in the scene graph and interactions with other gadgets. Thank you for watching.